We are about to begin the Veterans History Project interview. My name is Tony Kierna. I am the genealogy coordinator of the Schaumburg Township District Library in Schaumburg, Illinois. I will be interviewing Donald Kribbs, U.S. Air Force, Vietnam veteran, regarding his military service. Donald is referred to by his non-formal first name of Butch, and that is how I will address him throughout this interview. Today's date is February 26, 2019. The interview is being conducted in the Schaumburg Township District Library TV studio. No one else is present in the TV studio during this interview other than Butch and myself. Butch, thank you so much for participating in the Veterans History Project. Thank you for your military service.
Thank you.
It is a privilege and an honor to be able to conduct this interview with you. So what we like to do is just start off at the beginning. Give us a little bit of background information. When were you born?
I was born January 6, 1948,
okay,
in a town called Moberly, Missouri, and moved to Chicago. With my parents brought me to Chicago when I was probably about 3 or 4 months old.
Okay. And do you have other brothers and sisters?
I've got 2 sisters, one older, one younger, and I've got 4 other brothers, all younger.
Okay. And what were the names of your parents?
Donald and Mildred Kribbs.
Okay. And where did you go to school? Was it more in Missouri or over
No, all
here?
my school was done in Chicago. Grammar school, I went to, let's see, 3 or 4, I went to 3 different grammar schools and 1 high school in Chicago.
Okay. And what high school was it?
Thule High School.
Okay. And were you able after high school to be able to continue education at the college level?
I had started to, in fact, I literally, when I graduated high school, I was 17 in June of '65, and I basically packed my bags and I moved down to Missouri because my plan was to go down to college down there. But there was a family disagreement, so I came back to Chicago and entered the Air Force in September '65.
Okay, so you then enlisted in the Air Force.
I enlisted
at that point.
Right. I was enlisted at 17, and then I turned 18 the following January.
Okay. Now, in the line of siblings and brothers that you had, what position were you in? Were your other brothers, were they involved in the military?
Yes, I had 3 younger brothers that had gone in. The one just behind me is 2 years younger, Jim. He got drafted in the Army. The next brother, who's a year behind Jim, his name is Bob. He lives here in Wheaton. He enlisted in the Air Force. And then next brother, Dennis, who lives in Missouri, and Jim also lives in Missouri. Dennis enlisted in the Navy.
Okay.
And then Jim, I was in Vietnam 67, 68. Jim and Bob were there in 70, 71. And when they were in Vietnam, Dennis, the youngest, he's not the youngest brother, but the younger one in the military, he was on an aircraft carrier in the Atlantic Fleet.
Wow, you really have a family full of military people who were involved from beginning to end.
Quite a bit. Like I said, I told you earlier, I've got an uncle buried in Holland. He was killed on the invasion of Holland in '44.
Okay. How about your dad? Was he involved in the military?
Yes. When he heard that his brother had got killed in Holland, he just turned 18 and he enlisted in the Navy. In fact, he was in the Pacific when the war ended, a few months later.
Okay. Okay. So now that you've identified that you did join the Air Force, did you do it through Chicago? Did you go through the induction center down in Chicago?
Yes, I enlisted. The recruiter was at Milwaukee, Armitage, and Western. Right, it was that neighborhood I lived.
Okay.
And then I had to go down to the center. I believe it was on Randolph. I'm not sure. I don't remember. That's been a long time. Yeah. Went down there, went through the induction, and then from there they took us down to San Antonio, Texas for basic training.
Okay. What did your parents and other brothers think of you joining the Air Force?
I don't know, it's never really discussed. It's just something I decided to do. It was either, sit at home and, be aggravated with the situation at home, or just go in the Air Force and get on my own.
Okay. Did you have sort of a direction, an idea of what part of the Air Force that you wanted to be trained within? What was your target for a goal for an occupation within the Air Force?
Well, my initial goal was to try to get into, in the early days of computer processing,
okay,
data processing. But in the Air Force's wisdom, they put this particular job in what's called the general programming. And also in the general programming is medics, air police, and cooks. So once they get you to sign up for this one area, then they can do whatever they want. And
within that grouping of what the occupations were associated with that group.
right. So like I said, it was just the luck of the draw. I could have been in the air police, could have been in a cook, but I ended up in the medical field.
So you were going to San Antonio, as you said. What base was that you were going to? So this was the beginning of your basic training.
Right. Well, back then, I think it might still be at this time, but it was Lackland Air Force Base.
Okay.
And I still think that a lot of the basic training is done there. I'm not sure.
Okay. And once you got there, what was sort of the routine? I mean, did they really make you start to toe the line because now you were in the military?
Immediately.
Okay. Give us an idea. What was it like those first few days there?
Well, first night we get out. We flew into San Antonio, take the bus to the base, get off the bus, and right away it's like the drill instructor's yelling, get this and get that. And then the next morning, or we're taken to the barracks where we're going to live. And the next day, everybody gets their hair cut.
Okay.
Everybody gets the buzz cut. Everything off. Get our dog tags, and we're told right away memorize our number. See, back then we had a service number.
Okay.
I don't remember what year that they switched over to using the Social Security number, but it was, I think, in the early 70s when that started.
Okay. So now, give us an idea. What were the week-by-week areas of what you started being trained in during that first initial period?
Well, it was just basically military protocol and training. Okay, learn how to take an order without snapping back or something. Because if you said something wrong, now you're in trouble. And
oh boy. So, and how long was this time period that the initial training was involved with?
Back then, because of the increase in things going on in Vietnam, our training was for 6 weeks.
Okay.
And then after that, then they sent us to our designated what they call tech schools.
Okay.
My tech school was the medical tech school at Gunter Air Force Base, Alabama.
Okay. So were you happy that it was the medical side that you were going to be involved in as opposed to the other two choices maybe?
I really...
Did you have any choice at all?
No.
Okay.
It was like medic, air police, cook, just like that.
Okay.
I'm sure you've seen different things where they did that. Okay, everybody count off to 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And
okay.
Yeah, I ended up a medic.
So, and where was the place that you went to for this training?
It was Gunter Air Force Base outside of Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay.
Now there were 2 Air Force bases down there in Montgomery. One was on one side of town, and then Maxwell Air Force Base, which was part of what's called Air University. They sent people down there to train on air warfare and such, and there was a big regional hospital there because there were a lot of retirees down there. So you got people that were active in the service who had kids and retirees or whatever, and I worked the pediatric ward for probably a little over a year and a half.
Wow. So what was this length of training period down there? Was it pretty long?
My training the medical training was 4 weeks, and the rest of my medical training was considered on-the-job training, which I'd have to periodically go over some stuff and then take a test.
I mean, 4 weeks seems like a rather short period of time.
Well, they give you the basics, and then once they send you out to your what they called your regular duty station. That's where you start your actual training.
Okay.
Unless let's say if you're going to go into lab work or x-ray, then they send you to a higher tech field.
Did you know at that point where you were going to be migrating into, the next area?
No, basically after the 4-week training, the drill instructor came down and gave us our orders. You know, here's where you're going to go next. And there was a smart remark by my drill instructor going, oh, this guy's going, he's got a lot of travel pay coming. He's going all the way across town to Maxwell. And that was me.
Really? Wow. And so what was going to happen now at Maxwell, the next step?
Well, the next step was reporting for duty. They assigned me to the pediatric ward. Okay. And in the pediatric ward, basically, we did a little bit of everything. Whereas most of the other wards were specified as orthopedic, OB, internal medicine, whatever. But if it was a kid, it was on our ward. Okay. So I had the opportunity to basically cover all the fields, you know, in specialties at once.
Okay. In all of this part of the initial training and now the medical training that you were receiving, did you notice that there was anybody else from the Chicago area in that grouping with you, or no?
No. You know, there was, you know, from the Chicago area, you know, a lot of us were in the same training at Lackland.
Lackland, okay.
But then we got sent all over the country for different tech schools.
Okay. So during that initial beginning training and now the medical training, did you have any unique experiences happen to you or something that were like, wow, this is really different and unique?
Well, I was trained, you know, on a lot of things that I probably wouldn't have, like, you know, especially with from some very sick babies, you know, we had to do certain things, and the doctors just, you know, would show me, he says, come here, and they'd show me how to do certain things to insert an IV into a baby, which was very difficult because of the vein. So, you know, I was shown at a very young age how to do a cut down. Okay. And that's when you cut in and basically insert a small tube, capillary tube, like into the vein because it's too small to take a needle.
Wow. So as this training was progressing, were you getting an idea of where you ultimately were going to wind up?
No.
No?
It just, you know, one day I said it's maybe May or June of '67, orders came down and says, hey, you're going to Vietnam.
Okay. Now, how long had you been in the Air Force until you got that notification?
Probably close to 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Because I enlisted in September of '65, and I went to Vietnam, had boots on the ground August 1st of '67.
Okay. And was your enlistment, that was supposed to be a 4-year period?
I enlisted for 4 years.
Okay. Did you have a choice to do like a longer enlistment?
Oh, I could have re-enlisted after the 4 years, but after I got back from Vietnam, I was stationed at Andrews Air Force Base outside of Washington, D.C. And I had pretty kind of, I wouldn't say a nice assignment in Vietnam. It was, you know, it was an eye-opener. But I get back, now I'm at Andrews Air Force, I get another assignment that's really not the greatest. Okay. So at that point, they were offering early outs. In '65, there were so many guys getting their draft notice. The Army, they'd run and enlist in the Air Force. And now here we got, you know, 4 years later, the Air Force is saying, well, we got too many people. Mm-hmm. So they decided, and I'd only heard rumors about this because, like I said, I was with the Army in Vietnam, so I heard rumors about early outs coming up. So when I got to Andrews, I asked about the early outs. They said, you know, I got a bad assignment at Nam, I got a bad assignment at Andrews. I said, what's this with the early outs? And they told me, they said, well, there's about 10, 15,000 guys being offered this early out, and you fall into the group. I go, where do I sign? Yeah. So I was supposed to get out September of '69. I ended up moving it up to March. They were offering 6-month early out. Okay. So moved it to March. I flew into Chicago. I had a 3-day weekend in December. My brother got eloped, got married, so we're having a little party for him. So I had a 3-day weekend. I flew into Chicago for the weekend. So you know, caught a red eye out of D.C. on a Thursday night. I flew back to D.C. on a Sunday night. And when I flew back in, I had to check back in with the CQ saying, hey, I'm back from Chicago. Let everybody know I'm back, you know. That was all we had to do. Okay. And the guy that was on CQ duty, he was getting out with me in March. And he'd ask me, he says, well, where you been? I go, I went to Chicago for the weekend. I left Thursday night. And he said, oh, you weren't here Friday? I go, no, I was in Chicago, you know, for this party. I said, why? He said, well, they came down Friday and told us they're moving us up. And I go, to what? He said, we don't know yet. It's just sometime next month, you know, January '69. And I thought he was joking with me, you know. I you know, kind of verbally said a few things. I go, no, don't mess with me. But he said, no, we're getting out. So Monday morning, I'm at the orderly room, okay, verifying this information. And they said, yeah, we don't know the date, but it's going to be toward the end of January. Okay. I said, where do I sign? Okay. Yeah. So that was sort of the early aspect of your beginning through the end part, but let's go to how you got the notice to ultimately go to Vietnam. Well, I just received orders, you know, in the military, here's your orders. You know, they give you some prep time, so it was like, I think I had like 2 months, because that way, prior to going overseas, you know, if you got time available, you can take up to 30 days leave. Okay. So I think I took leave around the 1st of July. I wasn't really sure just when. You know, those dates are kind of lost in my memory somewhere. But I came back to Chicago, and when time came, I had to fly from Chicago to San Francisco, from San Francisco International to Travis Air Force Base, where I got on a military...
Well, let me ask you this. Were you flying, doing this transition to Vietnam by yourself, or were you with a unit?
By myself.
Oh, okay. That seems sort of unusual, but was that sort of the way that it was done?
Yeah, the only time they took whole units is if they were taking a whole command over. Okay. They might send them out in front of a boat, which they've done, or they might send them over on a couple aircraft. But my order said be at a certain point on a certain date. So I was, like I said, I flew to San Francisco, took a bus from that airport to the Travis Air Force Base, where I got on a military leased plane. I believe it was United Airlines, I'm not really sure. And we flew from Travis Air Force Base, and we made 2 stops before we got to Tan Son Nhut Air Force Base in Saigon. Okay. We stopped at Guam and Wake Island for refuel. Okay.
So now you were getting ready, or the flight was coming to an end, you were going to arrive at Tan Son Nhut. What was the next steps, or what were you anticipating you had to do at that point? Well,
when I got to Tan Son Nhut, I presented my orders, and they said, well, okay, your orders are for Advisory Team 57, that's down country in the Delta. So the people in charge said, here, we got these flights going out all the time, so I had to be on the tarmac at a certain time on this date, and fly down to what was called Tra Vinh, which was the provincial capital for Phu Binh province. Okay. Or Binh Binh province.
Were you traveling with other branches of the military at this point to get them to the parts of the country that they needed to go to?
Yes, there was other, mostly it was like some Navy, mostly Army guys that were on this, what was called a C-7A. It was C-7A Caribou. It was like the smallest version of C-123. You know, it was a 2-engine job. The door drops in the back, and everybody can get off and on. Okay. Because you had the C-7A, you had the C-123, and you had the C-130. You know, basically the same concept. You know, the back door drops down, you walk in and off, or they throw supplies off.
Okay. And so at this point, what part, like just at a higher level, was it the northern part of Vietnam, central, southern? Where was this ultimately that you were headed to?
I was going into what's called 4 Corps. See, Vietnam was separated into 4 sections. Okay. And I never really found a reason for it, but they never called the far north 1 Corps. It was always I Corps. Okay. So you had I Corps, 2 Corps, 3 Corps, and 4 Corps. Okay. So basically everything south of Saigon was 4 Corps. Okay.
So you were at the farthest southernmost part then of Vietnam?
Yes. Well, there was some country left further south of me, but I was pretty far down there.
Okay. And what was the town that you were ultimately going to report to, whoever was there?
I was reporting to my headquarters I was with the 553rd Medical Service Flight.
With the Air Force?
With the Air Force. Okay. It was an Air Force medical team, and you know, at Traven. So I reported in, and then I started working at the provincial hospital. You know, we had a full medical team of doctors and some nurses and a lot of corpsmen.
Okay.
And I guess it was pretty much to see what I can do.
Okay.
Because I was working in surgery. I dabbled in a little of everything. And then I got sent to a place called Khao Nang to be on this 8-man team. You know, so there's 7 Army guys and 1 Air Force guy. It was me. And so my main purpose was to work with the Vietnamese with their clinic.
Okay.
And do what we call med caps. They're like sick calls out in the villages and, you know, out in the rural area. And I wasn't there very long until when I got called to headquarters. In fact, I was there probably 3 months total in country when I got called to headquarters because I was being loaned out to the Army.
Okay.
You know.
Wasn't it strange? Isn't that sort of a really odd thing for you being in the Air Force and basically being transferred over or working with an Army unit?
I thought so, but I wasn't going to question it. But see, when I went on this team, okay, I'm filling in. You know, they lost their Army medic, but they also needed an Air Force medic to still work with the civilians. So I'm pulling like a double duty.
Okay. So that was the separation then? You were still going to be focused on the civilian population?
Well, that was the plan, but this Army major that was in charge of the team, he had other ideas of what I should do, and because he was determined to make a soldier out of me.
Okay.
And I kept having to point out to him, you know, I point to my chevrons and go, "Sir, I'm Air Force," you know. But he was determined to make a soldier out of me.
So what was like a typical day once you were with this team? You were now one per. Now let me just out of curiosity, you were the only Air Force person with this Army unit, or were there other Air Force people?
No, there were other Air Force around the area, but you know, generally, like I said, there was every team had 2 medics: the Air Force medic, the Army medic.
Okay.
But like I said, and when I first got there on this one team, it wasn't that far off the South China Sea. But then maybe a month or so when I got called to headquarters to take this other assignment. You know, the doctor in charge of our detachment said, "Here, the colonel asked for a favor. You know, they're in need real bad of a medic out here on this team, and we have to send an Air Force medic anyway. So I need you to temporarily kind of pull double duty."
Okay.
Well, that temporary job lasted about 9 months.
Oh wow.
You know, and finally
And
came down.
was it located in the same village area?
No, it was further kind of west, northwest of headquarters. You know, it was like almost a whole district away from, 2 districts away from where I was on the other team.
Okay. So were you ever involved in like an Army operation that wasn't just with Vietnamese civilians? Did you go
Yes.
out and you were? What was something like that? Tell us about that.
Just being a medic on the team. You know, we're going to go out, and we got this little incident we got to go out there and check out.
Okay.
So basically it was an ambush. You know, we snuck up on some VC that were looking to set up a mortar entrenchment against us. And so once we heard that they were on in this area, it was maybe about 300 yards or so from our camp. So we you know, the team got all their guns and everything together, and we had some Vietnamese soldiers with us. You know, I'm packing there. I got my machine gun, I've got my corpsman bag, and so we go over there and we see what looks like people who shouldn't have been there, you know. So.
So you basically then serve the role as both carrying your medical equipment as well as something to protect you with the machine gun that you have.
Correct.
Oh, that's amazing. What was so outside of the combat operation that you might be in? What would be a typical day if you were dealing with the Vietnamese civilians?
Typical day was just once I had everything done on the team, you know, taking care of any medical things going on with the team, I'd go down to the clinic. It was down the road from our team house. see what's going on there, any medical things that, I can help with, or or show them, a better way to do it, because sometimes they would do some things that really were strange, and only strange to me, it was normal for them. Okay. Like one time I walked in and there's this little girl who had stepped on a foot mine and blew off part of her foot, and the so-called medical chief for the district had put an IV into her thigh. Okay. And to me, that's useless right there. And I couldn't understand why he would do that, so I asked him, between my broken Vietnamese and his broken English, I said, why did you put this IV needle in her leg like that? Because all it's doing is blowing it up, Mm-hmm. And he tells me that the needle was too big to put an IV in her arm, and that just kind of got me a little bit pissed, So I grabbed him by the shoulder, drug him over to the treatment center, and go, listen, I said, here, I took the needle off the IV, pulled a smaller needle out of the treatment container, put it on there, and put it in. Okay. And it wasn't very pleasant, my conversing with him, because I called him anything in Vietnamese or English I can think of, I know. And the word got back to the district chief about this. And he, he come up to me and he says, something about, I didn't really like the guy. I said, well, I think his training was bad. In fact, one time the district chief's son fell and cut his head open. He would not let that medical chief of his touch him. He came to me and I was referred to as Boxy. Okay. That's the Vietnamese word for doctor. I was Boxy Dan. Okay. And I would try to tell him I'm not a doctor. I'm more like a nurse or a yita. And no, you Boxy. I go, okay, Anyway, the district chief come to me and he says he needs me to fix his son. I think it was like 4 or 5 stitches. It was a pretty easy deal. But after that, I was could do no wrong with the district chief.
Okay. Now, were you guys then staying in the village in your own housing, or
well, we had a compound, and we shared we had this house there. Half the house was the district chief and his family, and the other half was my team. Okay. In fact, I showed you a picture of our team house with the bunker out front, okay. And there's a window that's covered with sandbags. Well, there used to be a window there until they got blown out with a mortar one night. That's what caused the injury for the guy I replaced, because he shattered his ankle jumping out of his bunk. Okay. Which is a good thing he did, because I saw what his mosquito netting looked like from the shrapnel. Okay. So if he hadn't jumped out of that bunk when he did, he'd have probably caught a lot of shrapnel.
Now, how did you guys divide the days and the times that you were on duty working? Did you sort of switch through 24-hour periods?
Well, we kind of did. I had my thing to do, and one thing that I didn't have to do, but I was working with the team, and I'd pull what's called a radio watch. 24/7, someone's got to be sitting at that radio in case something happens, or we got to call in for some support.
Okay, because the call could come in from anywhere in the surrounding area.
Right, or from headquarters.
For our troops.
Right.
Okay.
So like one night I'm on radio watch. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning or so, and I get a call from well, some places they call him Puff the Magic Dragon, some places they call him Spooky. Well, anyway, I get a call that they're picking up heat signals in this one area. So once they give me the coordinates, I looked on the map and they go, that's VC controlled area. I said, well, that's free fire zone. So if you find something there you want to light them up. Okay. So at that point I woke up most of the guys in the house. I said, because it wasn't that far away from our front porch per se, And I said, everybody want to see Spooky, come out front here.
And give us a little bit more. When you refer to Spooky or Puff the Magic Dragon, what is it that exactly is going on?
Well, it's back then it was I think they call it a C4 or I forget the designation.
Oh, I see. So it's an airplane.
It's an aircraft.
Okay.
Back in the civilian use, I think it was called the DC-7.
Okay.
As well as aircraft that would sit on the ground like this. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But they had mounted miniguns in them. So literally, they'd fly over a target, bank the aircraft, and literally rain fire.
Okay.
It was raining fire.
Okay.
But now I've heard that they've even mounted some small artillery in these aircraft doing the same thing.
So what became of when you got the call, and what was going on that night when you were on duty? What did you have to wind up doing?
It was a quiet night, and actually I get the call that they have potential targets at this particular coordinates. So okay, well, here, go for it. And then I, asked anybody, hey, anybody to watch? So a bunch of us went out and watched it, like I said, raining fire.
Okay.
And and another, I wouldn't say part of my job, it wasn't part of my job, but since I knew more language than anybody on the team, because I worked more closely with the civilians, we had Americans flying forward air control. We had an Army FAC and an Air Force FAC.
And FAC is forward air control.
Right. Basically one was a Piper, and I think one was a Cessna.
Wow, it's hard to imagine in a war setting that those basic, one-man planes would be flying.
Well, they'd be flying, plus some of them were mounted with rocket pods on their wings.
Oh, wow.
In fact, there was a movie out a number of years ago with Danny Glover, Bird Dogs, something or other. Gene Hackman was the down pilot or officer, and again,
I think I know exactly what you're referring to.
Danny Glover was flying a FAC.
Okay.
And anyway, the major says they got these targets out there. You want to go down to the artillery and take care of the coordinates, the firing. So I say it was one of my unofficial duties, and it's nowhere on my records, but I go down there, and the pilot would give me the basic coordinates. Mm-hmm. So I'd write those down and give them to the artillery officer. And like I said, we had two 155 howitzers on this battery down the road. So we'd fire one round of smoke, and then we'd adjust with what it's called HE rounds, high explosives.
Okay.
So it was one round, then we'd adjust, and the number, I wasn't sure. At the time it was just like I knew all the numbers. So he would say adjust it, up 200 yards or to the left 200 yards, whatever, and I would just motion like. I'd go, high trom, whatever the number was. Mm-hmm. And pretty much hit our targets. In fact, one time I was at headquarters, had to go to headquarters or something, and this officer came in, I just cut it one corner of my eye, and he yells out my call sign. And the way he yelled it out, I go, am I in trouble for something? Or, scared, sir, I'm over here, what's up? And he sees my Air Force uniform. He says, you're the one running my artillery missions up there in Kanglong? I go, yes, sir. Come here, I want to buy you a drink.
So it's amazing the variety of things that you were involved in then. Medic, the Army, missions like that you're describing? Wow.
Yeah, like I said, I've been asked, some people aren't very sensitive about how they act. Did you ever kill anybody? I don't know. I just know they didn't get me. Okay. Did I use my machine gun? Yes. But pretty much it was to lay down cover fire.
Okay. And was that when you did do that with the machine gun lay down cover, was that in the village area that you were at? Or was this on like a patrol? Well,
it was, like I said, on that one ambush, okay. I had to lay down cover fire. So literally, we had the ambush, we fell back and called in for some air support. And we were waiting for a couple of Huey gunships to come in to, back us up. And that's when we saw, for the first time ever, these Cobras. Okay. So they sent two Cobras to back us up, and literally...
And Cobras, again, are helicopters.
It's a two-man helicopter, one sits low, one sits high, and they got all sorts of ordnance on it. So we just watched these two Cobras just tear this whole area up between rocket fire and minigun fire.
Okay, wow. So now that you've been at the location for, let's say, 9 months, and the routine is what it is, and working with the villagers, you did mention the term that they used to identify you, the Duxie, was it?
Buxie.
Buxie. So you were becoming really, sounds to be very well known by the villagers for
Yes.
your skills.
Yes.
And so was it a routine thing that you were helping them out in some way? Did you just often go to a village or the village that you were in and just have your hours of taking care of the villagers?
We went to remote villages, and what we pulled was called a med cap.
Okay.
Basically, it was like a sick call, and it's okay. It was more PR than anything. You know, kids said they had some skin irritations or scabies, or if there's something more serious, I can tell the parents, or I always had an interpreter to help me with the language for what I didn't know.
Okay.
And I said, you know, take this kid to Trav-In, there's the hospital there, something's wrong. Just like that little girl I told you about, that the guy didn't know how to put an IV in properly. After I got the IV going, I had to do a minor surgery, and you know, she got this, her foot's tore up. You know, so I got what's called a debridement.
Okay.
You know, cut away the bad tissue, the bad bone, and try to sew it up, stop the bleeding, pack it, and then like to the interpreter, tell mom, hey, get her to the hospital. Let them finish this up to try to save her foot, which they were able to. And I found out later on that they did save her foot.
Okay.
In fact, the doctor, you know, he made a point to see me when I was up at headquarters and asked me about this little girl. And I go, yeah, I did what I could, and I sent her up to you. He says, yeah, you did a pretty good job. You know, we were able to save the foot. I go, good.
You know, you mentioned earlier too, were you always in an Air Force uniform, even though part of the Army group that you were?
Well, I was in just basic jungle fatigues, but you know, we had our name tag. It said U.S. Air Force, and we had the Air Force chevrons on it.
Okay. What did the Army guys think of you as part of the unit?
I was just their medic, you know, and pretty much everybody took care. In fact, I was told by, you know, it's the one ambush I went on, the captain was telling me, he says, you know, if you know, I get hurt out there, it's his ass, because his job was to make sure I didn't get hurt.
Okay.
Yeah, they protected me.
Okay. So you were at the location for 9 months or so. What was you still had a tour left, the time of your tour to serve there. What was coming next for you?
Well, no, well, like I said, I left that team. It was probably mid to late July. Like I said, a lot of dates are a blur to me. I've got a lot of memory problems from, you know, different things, especially after the Tet Offensive.
Okay.
But said about mid-July or so, then I left the team, went to headquarters, and started my processing back to the States.
Okay.
You know, I've got to process out of the team up at headquarters. I've got to fly up to Saigon, Tonson Air Force Base, process out there.
So was your time in Vietnam a 9-month period, or was it up to a year?
No, I was in Vietnam right close to a year.
Okay.
Like I said, I don't remember the exact date I left. Like I said, but I know I got there August 1st, 67. And I'm pretty sure it was pretty close to August 1st, 68 when I left. And then, like I said, they put us on the flight, and from there, from Saigon, or Tonson Air Force Base, we flew to Tachikawa Air Force Base, Japan, refueled, and then flew back into San Francisco.
Okay, so it's basically just a reverse pattern coming back home.
Well, a little bit different. We went one way going in and another way coming back.
Okay. So what was it like now coming home, basically, or at least getting your foot back on American soil?
Well, it felt good, and I didn't, you know, I'd heard afterward that a lot of guys were, you know, treated pretty bad at the airports when they got off. I guess this was afterward. When I came home, I didn't encounter any of this, because some guys were spit on, you know, called names. Like I said, if it had happened to me, I think I might have ended up in jail, because I don't think I would have taken it too kindly.
Wow.
But that didn't happen, so I said, and I said, got back.
So what was, like, now that you're back, what were the next steps? Were you, obviously you were coming back to Chicago, I'm assuming, because that was your home.
Well, first off, I went back to Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. I wanted to visit some friends down there before I came back home. So I flew from, I flew from San Francisco to Atlanta, and from Atlanta to Montgomery, Alabama, seeing some friends and all, and seeing what was going on. And Then from there I flew back to Chicago.
Okay. I bet your parents... Well, let me ask you this too, because I didn't really mention this. When you were in Vietnam, were you frequently writing letters to family and getting letters and stuff back from them?
Yeah. And in fact, I had one of my aunts in Missouri. My cousin worked for this big food company, and she'd have these like big 5-pound bags of Kool-Aid.
Oh wow, 5-pound bag, that's
Yeah,
huge.
yeah, well, it helped a lot because, we got the well water for my team.
Okay.
Now, I've got to chemically treat it to make it safe to drink. Okay, it's safe to drink, but still tastes like crap. But my team loved it when I got my Kool-Aid, because now I can fix it up with some Kool-Aid, make it taste halfway decent.
Did you guys have a favorite flavor?
No, whatever was sent was appreciated.
Okay. So how was it, what did you hear from your family? What did they hear from you and stuff when you were exchanging letters?
Just normal stuff, nothing,
Did they send you anything that was really so special that you received that was like, wow, this was, and that maybe you didn't even ask for?
No, not that I can remember.
Okay.
Like I said, I've got a lot of memory blanks.
Okay.
Especially, like I said, after TET in '68, and I've always had a rough time with that. It took me a lot of years to even bring some of that out because of my buddy getting killed. Okay. And it was just a rough time for me.
Okay. So now you're back home, you're back in Alabama meeting friends and stuff. What was happening next then after this?
Well, like I said, I was down there for maybe a week, a few days to a week, and then I said, okay, well, I'm going to head back to Chicago now. And I told
them, you weren't out of the Air Force yet at that
I was
point.
basically on leave.
Okay.
So, and I came back to Chicago. When I was in Vietnam, I put away $1,000. If I got out of there alive, that would be my down payment on my car.
Okay.
Because I figured, if something happened to me, my mom would have got $10,000, on a death benefit.
Okay. Okay.
So when I get back, I go out and I buy my '68 Mustang. And $1,000 down, that was like almost half what the car was costing me. It's like $2,400 car.
Those were the days.
Yeah. And it wasn't nothing fancy with this Mustang. It was, a basic Mustang, 6-cylinder, the radio, just something I can get around in. But it was a brand new car. Okay,
so you bought it. Did you leave it at home because you still had your duty, or did you take it with you?
I drove it out to Maryland.
Okay, and that was like your next assignment?
Yeah, Andrews Air Force Base, Maryland was my next assignment.
Okay.
So I check in there, and in fact, when I'm checking in at the orderly room, I was talking to this other medic, and I asked him about what we called separate rations and quarters. So I had to rank if I wanted to get an apartment.
What was your rank?
At the time, I was an E4 sergeant.
Okay.
Now, when I went in the service, E4 was an airman first class. Then someone came along and changed the name to a sergeant. And then later on, I think now it's back to an airman first class. But at the time, it was sergeant. So with my rank and time in service, I could draw separate rations and quarters and basically get an apartment off base.
Oh, I see.
And I didn't want to live in the barracks.
Okay.
So I was talking to this other medic about it, and he was up for it too. I said, yeah, I'd like to move off base. So we ended up renting a 2-bedroom furnished apartment in Alexandria, Virginia, right across the river.
Okay. And what base was that you were going to be on in
That was
Maryland?
Andrews Air Force Base.
Andrews, okay.
They now call it Joint Base Andrews. I guess they closed a number of other things around there and incorporated everything into Andrews. It's where they park Air Force One.
Okay.
In fact, when I get off the Beltway, go into the base, I'd have to drive down. I literally saw Air Force One quite often going to the hospital.
Okay. So what was your role now in Maryland over there that you were at Andrews Air Force Base?
I was assigned to the orthopedic ward, which was not a pleasant sight. Body cast, amputations, a lot of guys, they came, from Vietnam, a lot of them were sent through Germany.
Okay.
And then triage to whatever, either into Andrews or to Walter Reed Army Hospital.
Okay.
So I said, it was, a lot of nasty stuff on that ward.
Okay. And how long were you there now for?
Well, let's see, I checked in, I'm guessing sometime in September. I'm not really, because my dates are kind of gone. until I got my discharge on January 23rd, 1969.
Okay.
So I was there, let's see, September, October, November,
about
December.
3-4 months.
About 4 or 5 months.
Okay. Okay.
Like I said, when they offered the early out, that's, okay, I'm done.
So now the end is coming as far as your military service, and you're going to be processing out. And so what was in store for you for now when you were going to be out of the Air Force?
Well, I didn't really have a clue. I knew I just...
Were you coming back to Chicago?
I came back to Chicago, and I knew I had to get a job right away. And next door neighbor was working for a place called Morton Grove Auto Parts. And he said, hey, we need a driver to help deliver auto parts in the Morton Grove, Skokie area. I said, okay. So I got hired on there right away and did that for about a month. And then didn't really care for that much, and I thought I'd try a white-collar job.
Okay.
I saw an ad that the First National Bank of Chicago were hiring for tellers or whatever. And at that time, they were still in the old building. They had just started finishing up the new building. It's now called the Chase Bank down there. But anyway, we moved into the new building. I probably worked there for about 3 months, and really got tired of just the monotony of okay, I got a bag of money, I got to prove it out. Okay, here's what is submitted by this CTA stop or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was there about 3 months, and me and a buddy, we saw an ad in the paper that said UPS needs drivers. Okay, well, we went down on a Thursday, went through the whole process, and the guy doing the processing goes, you guys are Vietnam veterans? I go, yeah. Can you start Monday?
Well, that's promising.
So that's when I started UPS. But in the meantime, though, my wife's aunt, she was what you might call in charge of the trauma unit at this big manufacturing plant in North Lake called Western Electric. They used to make all the telephones and whatever. And we talked, and she'd quiz me about my knowledge of trauma and this and that. And she told me one time, she says, you get your license, you got a job. I even had one time the medical facility at UPS, the doctor there, wanted me to transfer from driving to be up in his clinic upstairs. I go, no, I don't want to be here with you. I didn't care for the doctor. He was like, as far as I was concerned, a quack. But anyway, but like I said, I checked into getting my license, but the state of Illinois at the time didn't recognize any military training or experience. Because I told him, I said, test me.
Wow.
I'll take any test you got.
I mean, with all the hands-on experience you actually had, so what were your thoughts at that point? What were you going to try?
Well, at that point, they're telling me I can't do it unless I go to school and start from scratch. So I had this thing, like I said, I didn't know what UPS was when I got hired on, and then I go into UPS middle of June 1969, and I get a real nice route. It's up by the Gold Coast, and I got like Hugh Hefner lived on my route. His mansion was on my route. There's some other very rich people lived on my route. And I also had the Catholic Cardinal residents on my route.
Wow.
Never met Hefner, but I used to talk to the Cardinal all the time.
Okay.
In fact, when my wife's Catholic, and when our first daughter was born in 1970, I was telling the Cardinal about her christening and whatever, would go along with the wife's thing. And he thought that was kind of nice. And he asked me where I was going to be, and I told him, and didn't think anything of it from there. Get to the church, the priest pulls me aside, and he said, do you know Cardinal Cody? I go, yeah, we talk every now and then. And he said, well, he sent these medallions and this crib medals for your daughter's christening. I go, well, that was nice of him, Well, I guess this wasn't a common practice with the Cardinal. So, I thought, well, next time I saw him, I thanked him for it, and 3 years later, my second daughter was born. I mentioned that, she's going to have her christening at the same church. So I guess he had his secretary or whatever go back in the file and say, here. So once I heard I kind of didn't say anything, but, he kind of indicated something was coming for her. Mm-hmm. Once again, there's a different priest now at the same church. And, he was kind of amazed that the Cardinal's sending all this special stuff to this christening, like who's this guy, who's this family? So it was a nice gesture, a nice card, a nice medallion. it's almost, I'd almost guess to be pure silver and gold. It's 45 years old. If I showed it to you today, you'd look at it and go, yep, damn.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I used to work with this very Irish Catholic girl, and I told her the story, and she looks at me, she says, Cardinal don't do that for no UPS driver. The next day I brought my daughter's card, to Lisa Kribbs from John Cardinal Cody with the medallion, and she got standing there going like this. She's in awe. And I go, Patty, what's the matter? The Cardinal blessed us. I go, the hell do I know? I'm just a UPS driver.
Oh, jeez. Did you miss, even though you were told that you would need to restart the process for the, getting deeper into the medical area, did you miss that?
Yeah, I did. In fact, back in early to mid 70s, well, for the early part of the 70s, the Illinois College of Podiatry, which is now called the Dr. Scholl's School of Podiatry, was on my route. Okay. And a lot of the students lived on the north end of my route. They had these gray stone flats. They'd be 3 or 4 students to a flat. And they'd bring an orange home, and they'd cut it with a scalpel, and they'd practice the suturing. And I was showing them some of the techniques I learned suturing in Nam. Word got back to the dean of the college that the UPS driver was showing their students how to suture.
Wow.
So he met me one day downstairs. I was making my delivery, and he's just standing there. I don't know who the hell he is. And he looks at me and he goes, you the UPS driver showing my students how to suture? I go, probably. And he asked me where I learned this. And I told him my experiences, and he just looked at me flat and he goes, why are you driving a truck?
Okay.
And I said, well, because the state of Illinois says I wasn't qualified to stay in medicine. And he said, how would you like to go to school here?
Wow.
I said, well, I just got a high school diploma. I don't have any pre-med. I have any college, He said, so your experience, the GI Bill, and me cutting the red tape, if you want in here, I'll put you in here.
Okay.
We talked for about half an hour, which is kind of unusual for a UPS driver now, but back then we had the time. So after talking, I go, well, I appreciate your offer. I was really, kind of taken aback by his offer. But I said, I've got 2 kids under 5 years old. There's no way I can quit my full-time job and go to school. But I said, appreciate it, but,
So it didn't pan out then? You weren't able to take advantage of that?
No, I couldn't. And in fact, it was about that same time, the state of California, they started putting Vietnam medics out on the street in their ambulances. I remember, they were back in the 70s and 80s, they had all these TV shows about the paramedics on the street or the EMTs on the street. Well, that's how it started with California. They got, you figure, you got all these.
What year would this have been about then? Were you home for like a few years already?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact year they started putting the EMTs on the street, but it was such a successful program that it spread all across the country. But by that time, do I want to go do this, or I already got a pretty good career started at UPS? And like I said, I was on this delivery route for almost 7 years, and in fact, when Hugh Hefner's mansion was like my hideout. I can go down in his basement. They had a bowling alley one end, a bar on the other, a game room upstairs.
Wow.
So I can park in this dead-end alley behind his house and stay down there for about an hour and kill some time. Yeah, but when he moved out to LA, I go, my route's screwed. So that's when I put my papers in to transfer to the big trucks.
Okay.
So like I said, 7 years on the delivery truck, and I was on 23 years on a semi.
Wow. And the semi was just, did that deliver to like more centralized places where then the packages were distributed?
Yes,
to?
most of it was that. And a lot of it too was going to businesses. We might take a 45-foot trailer and go to 4 or 5 different companies and say, here, they put the pallets on a trailer, and we take the trailers in and they break the pallets down and sort the packages.
Now, was that local driving for the semi, or did you have to go way outside Illinois?
Most of it was local, but I was also what was called a yes man for the road. See, we had road drivers and city drivers. I was a city driver. But I volunteered that, hey, if you need me, I'll take a road run. Go to Indianapolis, go to Grand Rapids, Michigan, Davenport, Iowa, Springfield, Illinois, up toward Wisconsin Dells. The furthest I ever went was Toledo, Ohio one day.
Okay.
But it was just nice to get away, just to get on the stuff. In fact, I was qualified, and I would take double 40, two 40-footers across Indiana over to the Ohio line.
Okay.
And then some guy out of Pennsylvania, Ohio would bring a couple over, and then we'd switch and pull back. And I'd been qualified, I was waiting to get qualified on triples, 28-footers, when I hurt my back and I couldn't go out on the road.
Okay.
But I had my double 40 license, and also had my, with the training school for UPS, I was a qualified trainer at UPS. And about the same time I got my training certificate, I was inducted into the UPS Circle of Honor, which is their equivalent of their Hall of Fame in '95.
Okay. Wow, that's a fascinating accomplishment. So when did you retire then from UPS?
July 1st, '99.
Okay.
Like I said, I had my 5th and last back surgery July 1st of '98. And once again, the doctors are telling me, you know, after all these operations, I should get off the truck before it cripples me. Well, I told the doctor, I go, here, it's now 1st of July, '98. I said, Doc, I got at least one more year to go. I need my 30 years for my pension and benefits.
Okay.
So he tells me right there, he says, you need extra time off, you need more medicine, call me. You know, we're going to get you your 30 years.
Okay.
So in '99, I went down and I go, it's May or June. That must have been about May. I went down to the Union Hall to submit my papers to start the process. And I'm thinking with the time and the other factors involved, you know, the guy asked me, he said, when I wanted to retire. I said, well, I guess I'm eligible around the 1st of August. Mm-hmm. So he pulls up my information on the computer and he goes, no, you can retire the 1st of July if you want to. I go, put it down. Yeah, so wow. July 1st, '99, I retired.
Okay. So have you been also at this time after retirement and returning from Vietnam, have you been participating in like American Legion and VFW?
VFW. I was, in fact, this year, this spring will be 50 years in the VFW.
Wow.
A guy I worked with at the First National Bank.
So did you start participating in it almost right after Vietnam?
Well, so this guy I worked with at the bank, he was already a member of the VFW up on the far north side, up by Clark and Devon. So he suggested I come with him to a meeting one time. I said, okay, let's go. And like I said, I joined that post. And like I said, I've been in, over the years, I think 5 different posts.
Okay. And what, are you currently with a post right now?
Currently with Streamwood Post 5151. I'm active with one of their committees, you know, for the what they call A&D. We help with the veterans at Hines Hospital. These people that live there basically 24/7. We'll have some big old days for them. We'll have a couple barbecues during the summer for them. So we have outing, like we had a golf outing one year. We made some nice money to put toward this barbecue and these bingos. I'm also on the color guard and rifle team.
Okay.
Like the Streamwood has this veterans area right by the City Hall, and Memorial Day we'll have the color guard with some other functions going on, and then we do the 21 gun salute. Plus I'm also involved with the veteran flag ceremony at the Hoffman Estates Police Department the first Sunday of every month, where we honor a deceased veteran.
I know you even told me when we were talking earlier about the honor flights you were involved in.
I've been also involved with the Veterans Network Committee of Northern and Western Illinois. You know, like I said, my 3 brothers and I, we went on the honor flight in 2016, and I thought they did such a great job, I joined the organization. And I guess they liked what I was doing, helping out, whatever, and about a year later they asked me if there was an opening on the board of directors, if I'd be on the board. I go, well, I've never been on a board of anything in my life, but I said, I'll give it a shot, you know. Mm-hmm. So basically it's going out and talking to people, getting donations wherever I can for the next honor flight. It's my way of paying it forward. You know, like I said, these people sent me and my brothers on this honor flight. Mm-hmm. So what can I do to send some other veterans?
Yeah. Wow, that's really an amazing story on all the involvement that you're in on. When you were in Vietnam, and I think, again, this is part of our conversation that we had earlier and stuff like that, in the role of a combat medic, when you came back home, what was involved in that in order to honor you for that?
Well, you know, in '68, the Army put me in for the Combat Medic Badge, a CMB. And the Air Force declined it, saying that's an Army award. You can't get it, you know. Well, you know, that's what I did, you know, but they, you know, back then, the Army, Air Force, they got their own thing. Then in 1998, I saw an article in the VFW magazine. It was, you know, it was basically like a bio of the CMB, the Combat Medic Badge. And right in that article, it said there are some Air Force and Navy veterans eligible for this award because of where they served and what they did. And I go, you know, the light went off, go, duh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So through, at the time, it was Senator Fitzgerald's office. Now, we'll put a little packet together. Here's the article. Here's my report from my NCOIC showing, here, this is what I did. It's all on paper showing what I did with the Army. You know, got all this information. And I sent it, or I gave it to Senator Fitzgerald's people. They took it to the Pentagon. Some lieutenant colonel, who's probably never been off her bottom side, you know, very much, sent a letter back saying, this is an Army award. You know, basically telling me the same thing I'd heard 30 years earlier. So I go, okay, I kind of put it in the back of my mind. And 10 years later, in 2008, my brother asked me if I still had my folder. I go, yeah, why? And he said, well, this Peter Roscom in DuPage County had just been elected to the House of Representatives, and he was very veteran friendly. He says, let me take your folder to Roscom and see what his people can do. I said, what the hell I got to lose, you know? So I gave him my folder. Roscom's people took it to D.C., took it to the Pentagon, and about 6 months later, I get a call from his office in Bloomingdale saying, hey, we've heard from the Pentagon, and they said, you should have had this award a long time ago. I said, well, I tried a long time ago. So anyway, the award comes down, okay, and then we made arrangements for Roscom to come to our VFW post to make the presentation.
Okay.
So he came out, you know, and made the presentation.
And what year would this have been then, that you were actually going to get the award that you should have gotten 34 years ago?
Well, actually it was now, was it June? I think it was June of 2009.
Okay.
In fact, I didn't know anything about any article being written, but I guess the Daily Herald had a reporter, and in fact my daughter had taken some pictures, and the one picture she took of me holding the CMB was in this article in the Daily Herald. And I'm sitting at home reading the Sun-Times. My wife reads the Herald, and she goes, you know, you're not going to believe what I'm looking at here. I go, no, I can't see that part. So she turns it around. There's like a half a page, you know, of my picture there in the article about my service and getting my medal.
Wow. So it just took somebody else who was in your corner to try to get you...
And talking to the right person at the Pentagon to actually read, you know, what I submitted. Obviously, this current lieutenant colonel, she, you know, she read the article, read the submitted paperwork, you know, to me it was cut and dry, but obviously it was beyond her scope, you know.
Well, congratulations on being able to finally achieve that.
So like I was telling you earlier, you know, I got my CMB here, and also got, this is what's called the Air Force Commendation Medal, and I got this for actions under fire for the Tet Offensive, taking care of the civilians that were brought in to the main hospital, because I was at headquarters. So I spent a lot of time at headquarters treating a lot of wounded.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. I'm so glad to hear that you finally got the recognition that you really deserved.
Yeah, like I said, that's, that'd be 10 years ago now, and I finally, you know, I got that.
Okay. Well worth the wait, I'm hoping that it was.
And I was even questioned one time. I was in this bar down in Addison. It was a bar and restaurant. And this Army guy saw my CMB and he saw my Air Force thing, and he, you know, he questioned me about it. He said, what are you doing with that CMB on? I said, well, I earned it.
Because he saw that there was the Air Force versus the Army kind of like...
And, you know, and I've done the same thing. I've questioned people on their stolen valor. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of stolen valor.
Have, yeah. Okay. Well, for those who are listening, give us an idea what stolen valor is.
Stolen valor is, you've got some people out there who never served, but like to tell people that they did. And they come up with all this phony stuff. And a lot of times, somebody who served can spot the phony stuff. Okay. And they'll call them out on it. In fact, I heard this one guy called out this one guy. He's got his fatigues on and all this other crap, and basically said, if you don't take that stuff off right now, I'm going to put you on the ground.
Wow. I mean, I can see where veteran to veteran,
Yeah.
or veteran to proposed veteran who is masquerading under such conditions.
Oh yeah,
like
there's
that.
quite a few. You know, not only just regular guys, there's been politicians called out on it. You know, but anyway, I told the guy, I said, listen, I understand where you're coming from, you know, but you got a smartphone. Google my name, you know, Donald Butch Kribbs, combat medic, and it'll bring up the article about me in the Daily Herald. You know, I guess once it's online, it's there forever. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, he does that. He goes, oh, sorry. You know, they thanked me and everything. You know, we left friendly.
Good.
And like I said, I was once a few years ago on a senior league at Hoffman Lanes. You know, this one guy is trying to tell me how he was in the Marine Corps, and first off, his age didn't really match up to me. Mm-hmm. I got a couple trick questions. I know how to trip some people up. So because he's trying to tell me he was in the Marine Corps in Vietnam. I'm like, oh yeah, well what did you do? He says, well I was Special Forces. Well, Army had Special Forces.
I was going to say, I think I know that one.
Yeah, well, he was Special Forces. I said, okay, where did you serve? I said, you know, the Marines were always all the way up north, you know, and you know, Vietnam was in 4 sections. You know, I was in 4 Corps all the way south, so you were all the way north. He says, yeah, I was in 1 Corps. Nobody
Right,
ever.
because earlier you said they call it I-Corps.
I-Corps. So obviously he wasn't there. And like I said, his age didn't match up anyway, you know, because he, so I called him out on it right there in front of a bunch of senior bowlers. I go, you know, you're lying. You never served in the Marines. You never served in Vietnam. Turns out he was in the Army Reserves.
Oh, okay.
I found this out a few years later. But all of a sudden, after I called him out on it, you know, all of a sudden he's got back problems. He can't bowl anymore.
Oh, wow.
Because he didn't want to be around people.
I mean, it's just sad to hear that you encounter situations like that. It's just, you know, it's hard pressed for me to even understand how someone who hasn't done that just can throw that out there. As if
Well, when they do this, the average person, they wouldn't know any better.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, they try to ingratiate themselves. Hey, look what I did.
That's true.
They did.
That's true.
And like I said, someone like me, who didn't want to go through this stuff and had to go through it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm throwing feet first into the fire. Here, you know, here's your guns, and you know, I had no combat training whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But the doctor in charge knew what I can do when it come to, you know, trauma treatment and first aid, and that's why I was selected to, out of all the guys on the medical team, I was selected to go out there and do this.
Wow, that's amazing. I think we're going to enter a phase of this interview now that we call reflections. Library of Congress sort of recommends we just talk in general terms about a very, you know, your experiences and things like that. So let me just ask you this question. How did your military service experiences affect your life? And these are sort of broad questions.
Well, I would say made me kind of ease back on some of my other issues I had. I was always, as a kid out in high school, I was a little hothead.
Okay.
And I growing up in Chicago on the streets, you know, you get in some fights. And especially with my brothers, you know, in fact,
It's true.
you know, it was known in the neighborhood, you mess with one of us, there's going to be 3 or 4 of us you had to deal with.
Okay, that makes sense.
And in fact, you know, me and 2 younger brothers, we always passed off for triplets.
Wow.
If I showed you a picture of my brother that's 3 years younger than me, he's like almost a foot tall. You know, he's like 6'2" or something, and
Okay.
you know, a little heavier. But for a long time, everybody thought we were triplets. You know, I'm 2 years. There's 2, like I say, 48, 50, and 51. Okay. You know, my mom would take us to Sears. I need 3 of those, and 3 of those, and 3 of those.
Yeah, you did have a big family there, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, and especially you know, wherever the deals, you know, and you know, you got 9 people sitting at the table. You know,
Yeah.
You know, what goes the furthest? You know.
9 people. That's almost unheard of today.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, you know, you and I at our age, we've lived through that and experienced large families and so on.
Well, my dad came from a large family.
Okay.
I think there were 10 in his family.
Okay. So you certainly kept that tradition going.
Well, he did, yeah. Actually, I've only had 2 kids. In fact, most of us, Of my own brothers and sisters, I think the most anybody's had is 2 kids.
Okay. Sort of with the trend that we see going on in the population in general today, so that makes sort of sense. What are some of the life lessons that you learned from your military service?
Gee, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not really sure how to answer that one.
Okay. How about your views now as having served in the military? What are your views now about war in general and how things go about in the world today?
Well, I look at it, as was doing this or doing that necessary? Or why are we still being the policemen of the world? Just like when the stuff started in Iraq and the Middle East, and I told people right away, I go, this is just like Vietnam except it's in the desert. Yeah. Because you got people who will smile at you when you're looking at them, but if you turn your back, watch yourself. That was the way it was in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. It was the same way. Look in Afghanistan now. You got guys, Afghan soldiers, killing friendlies.
That's true.
The same thing happened all over. You don't know who your friend is and who's not. Mm-hmm. Luckily in Vietnam, I kind of aligned myself with this one Vietnamese soldier and made a deal with him. That if I got there alive, he could have my uniforms, my jungle boots, my guns, because I had 2 guns that weren't registered, so I said, all this is yours if I get out here alive. And he goes, okay. Best deal I ever made.
Wow, that's amazing for that. Again, having heard your experience and know that this is going to be housed in the Library of Congress, what kind of a message would you like to leave for future generations about your life, your military service?
Well, my life, I just tried to live it the best I could, and like I said, learning how to treat people a lot differently than what I used to as a kid. Be more tolerant of some people. Okay.
That's good.
Even though I might secretly think, oh God, this really guy's a real dick, But anyway, but I said, okay, that's our thing. Maybe we work through that. And even after, like I said, when I left UPS, I worked part-time as a bartender at Hoffman Lanes, and I think that helped too because my time at UPS dealing with customers daily, and then working at the bar, that was dealing with the customers, all the time.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is good. We're going to get into what we call now the conclusion phase, a couple more questions. Is there anything that, because I've been asking the questions and doing a lot of the talking, and I know getting you to think about what you've experienced, but is there anything that I've maybe not asked or anything that you would like to share that we've not talked about?
No, I can't think of anything.
Okay. What would be maybe, and this would be probably our last question then, what is it that you yourself wish that people like myself or just the general population just knew more about veterans?
Well, like they should know maybe what they've gone through. Like so, after Vietnam, excuse me, after Vietnam, we pretty much were the pariah. Nobody wanted to talk about us or to us until, I guess, basically 9/11. And after that, when we're sending troops over to the Middle East and all this other, now all of a sudden, they're recognizing us, and it's really it's still strange at times when people come up and thank me for my service, because for so many years they didn't.
Okay.
Now that's a whole new experience for a lot of us.
Hopefully, it makes you feel good.
Yeah, it does, but at times it's kind of awkward too, because okay, they thank you for your service. Well, appreciate it, and I don't know how sometimes to respond to it to certain people.
Well, at least I think both sides then, when they can at least offer that, whether you can offer anything back, I think it makes both parties feel good.
Yeah, it does. And in fact, a lot of times, another Vietnam vet, we'll say to each other, "Welcome home."
Okay. Well, that's interesting to hear.
Ask your brother about that.
Okay. All right. Any last things? Anything else you need to speak of, talk about, bring up?
No, because I was going to bring up something about, my buddy got killed over there, Tet Offensive, but it's still a pretty emotional subject for me.
That's fine. No problem. All right, so I think we're just going to conclude the interview then.
Okay.
This concludes our interview of Butch Kribbs, U.S. Air Force, Vietnam veteran for the Veterans History Project. Thank you, Butch, for your participation in the Veterans History Project. It means a lot to us as individuals and to the nation as a whole that your story of your military service will live on for all future generations to reflect upon. Thank you so much for sharing with us your story of your military service. And most importantly, thank you again so much for your military service. It has been an honor and a privilege to have been able to interview you. Thank you very much.
And I appreciate guys like you who take the time to ask us about it.
You're very welcome. Thank you.